Lately, I've been looking around my abode and I think it's finally time to start on what I've been putting off. Everywhere I go, there's a build that's almost finished, not quite done, but close. Some have a bit of terraforming left, spawn proofing, or maybe just a rock. I'll get to that one. I think that's just part of being a builder, for me anyway. I'll start something, get inspired, build it, and then either forget about a certain part I originally planned to add, or get distracted by the next idea that comes along. And I don't mind that, it's how I do things. It's how I keep myself inspired. But even knowing that, every now and then I get the urge to go back and finish things, to tidy up those edges that have been left a little rough or finally add the details I skipped when I said I'll do that later. So that's what today's about. I'm not starting anything new, I'm not planning anything huge. I'm just going around my abode and finishing off the little things. Well, maybe not completely finish, I still need some things to procrastinate about. I always seem to have a few projects going at once, and honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. Keeps the world feeling alive. So let's get started. I've got some catching up to do, and I'll start by showing you those unfinished areas I've been hinting at. Firstly, I've decided that I want to remove the middle rock, as I think it ruins the composition a bit, as the rest of the terrain is all leading the other way. It also blocks the tree, which was quite the painful experience. Especially from this side, it just sticks out. The next task is to texture this flat section of my moss farm. I plan to add a bunch of foliage and make it look a bit overgrown. And over here is the main goal. I need to completely texture the island to fit in with this area of terrain I already started on. Hopefully I'll be able to show you how my terraforming has developed from when I worked on this section recently. So with those three larger tasks, and most likely a few smaller distracting ones in between, it's time to work on just that, the church terrain. Due to the size, I'll first need to gather a bunch of resources. Luckily, I still have some left over from working on the church, but not nearly enough. With that, I have all the random blocks I could need. I'm not going to be using any schematic mods for the terrain, so it's just an estimate of what I'll be using, so I'm not limited by block choice. For the terrain itself, I'm going to be following this sort of template I've laid out, while making sure to soften spots like this overhang. Wait, stop. So I finished the base texturing of the terrain, but before I add in the non-full blocks and foliage, I need to make an addition to my moss farm. This is my moss farm, and a few people on the server have asked if it produced bone meal, so it sounds like it's time to make an addition. Let's go through the back door and get started on it. After clearing the area, the first step was to make sure the farm would stay off while building the rest. This ice tunnel is where the bone blocks would go into my storage. And yeah, bone blocks, as it saves me from needing to make a shulker loader as they're already compressed. This was my first time using autocrafters, and although it's simple and definitely not optimized, it was fun experimenting with. And finally, this top tunnel is where the moss would come into and fall into the hoppers and then composters to turn into bone meal. To control its mode, this lever will be used. When it's up, moss will generate, flowing straight into the storage below. But when it's down, the moss gets diverted towards the composters and autocrafters. And the bone blocks flow down towards this bone meal storage. Here are the rates if you're wondering. But redstone segment over. And with that, the terrain is finished and textured. Let's quickly get a better look, but I think it came along much better than I could have hoped for. I made sure each section of the terrain smoothly transitioned towards the next, so it almost feels just like a single shape. Every side of the terrain also has a slightly different feel, this one being a bit steeper. This one with its overhang, which was fun to build and really adds some depth. And finally, the last side is very flat and slowly gains in height. The blocks I used are all pretty unsaturated, so the flowers fill in that color gap instead, similar to how it works in real life. It may be hard to notice, but I do have a path leading to the water, which I'll connect a way to get to sometime. It's a very worn out, untrodden path, as you can see, and also only leads to the main church entrance. I do have one more comment though, that rock looks a bit weird. It's time for the reason you clicked on this video. And it's gone. Time to move back to the moss farm, but this time to texture this flat part. I wanted to keep it somewhat simple, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. The small bits of red and blue stand out against the rest of the build, which means it should draw your attention to where the farm and storage and on switch is. I made sure it was all spawn proof using some lichen under moss carpets. But I guess it's time to finish mending the rock. Wait, I still need to spawn proof the church terrain. Rocks are pretty patient, it can briefly wait. So I've gone ahead and spawn proofed it, and here's how it now looks. The dim lighting makes the build much more vibrant, and I also added a few buttons and pressure plates around to stop mob spawns. I then worked on the roof of the church, although I later found out that leaf litter isn't spawn proof. It adds a cool detail though. After getting 3 shulkers of maxed out spare gear, the rock was all that was left to do. First is the flat section. And now the rest. It's finished, and I think the entire terrain looks so much better now, especially from this angle. It no longer obstructs the tree, it makes it all more open and soft. So what did I learn? that most projects I thought were 99% done weren't, and needed a lot more work than on the surface, and they also opened new projects, which you will see in the future. And with that, thanks for staying.